I'm Renee Williams.
And I'm Billy Thomas.
And welcome to another edition of From the Woods Today. You know, Billy, last week the nation celebrated Veterans Day, and with this being our thankful special, I kind of wanted to take a little bit of time to say thank you to all the veterans out there who have either served or who are going to serve or who are serving right now. And they're doing that for this great country of ours.
Really appreciate you all being with us this evening. And, you, like I, got to experience a kind of an impromptu thanks. I certainly appreciate that. And I'll echo what Renee was saying. A big thanks to all of our service members, current, former, and future, for their efforts as well. Certainly, I think often we can take those for granted, and they are really important to our country, not only today, but in the future. So thank you all. But today, we're going to be being thankful for trees, right? Trees and forests here in Kentucky. I often say that trees are the answer. And it's kind of a tongue-in-cheek way to say that I think we could twist the answer to be trees eventually if we worked with it. But today we're all about the benefits that trees and forests provide to us. Some of these you all are probably quite familiar with, and others, they may be new to you. So I'm really excited. We've got a big lineup for today's show. I'm going to kick us off with just kind of a general presentation on tree benefits and forest benefits overall that we receive on a daily basis. Then we're going to have Dr. DJ McNeil coming in, and he's going to be talking about some of those birds that we are associating with Thanksgiving this week, and turkeys are not the only one. So
right.
We'll look forward to having Dr. McNeil on talking about that. And then we're going to follow that up with Chad Nyman, our colleague who handles so much in the wood products sector. And he's going to be talking about many of the forest products that we derive from our trees and forests. So looking forward to that as well. And then following Chad, we're going to have Lee Moser, who you heard from earlier. And Lee's going to be talking about many of the benefits associated with trees when it comes to water quantity and quality. And certainly that's one that often gets overlooked, but is so critical. Water is one of the most critical issues that we really deal with. And we're blessed here in Kentucky to have fairly abundant water resources, but that's not the case everywhere. So our trees and forests are a big part of that. So we'll look forward to celebrating to trees today and forests and be thankful for those. But also, without the woodland owners and those who care for those trees, they would be in much rougher shape than they are. So big thanks to you all for your efforts to be good stewards of our resources.
Definitely. So we're going to kick this show off with the person of the day, you. So you're going to start talking about trees and a little bit about wildlife, and then just kind of, start the show off, and then we'll keep on going once you're done.
All right. So, an obvious benefit of trees is they can help us tell the weather, right? Or the season, if you will, whether it's snowing outside and there's no leaves on them, or they're just putting out their flowers and it's a spring, they can be a good indicator of the season we're in. But we're going to talk a little bit more about general benefits of trees and forests. And as I was preparing this presentation, there's so many different directions you can go. And again, we're going to have Chad Nyman talk about wood products, and then we'll have Lee Moser talking about the affiliation with water. But it goes well beyond all of those too. So we're just going to hit the surface the best we can on these of why trees and forests are so important and how they benefit us all. So again, you all know trees and forests are important, right? And, wood products and water are two that we often think of, but there's many more, right? And I want to try to go into a little bit of detail on each of these. And as you can see, it's a pretty good list. There certainly could be more added, but we, for the interest of time, wanted to kind of keep it tight if we could. So I want to start off thinking about trees and forests as a source of income and food. Many woodland owners derive benefits from timber sales from their property when they do have harvest. But there's other things as well, and there's also a lot of food sources associated with our woodlands here in Kentucky. Again, timber is important, and it's often, the first thing that comes to mind when people think about a source of income from their woodlands, but there's many more, right? We can think of things such as shiitake mushrooms that grow on our oak logs or hickory logs, maple syrup that we derive from our maple trees here in Kentucky. And we have a thriving Kentucky Maple Syrup Association as well that we've been working with for the last few years. So if you are interested in maple, I would encourage you to connect with that group. But there's also fruit and nuts that all come from our forest. And other benefits, there's crafting materials that we can gather from our forest. It could be a source of income. So think of them as not only a source of income, but a source of food as well. Next, I want to spend a minute or two thinking about trees and forests and how they benefit wildlife. And we have our friendly squirrel there on the right, and I think we all can quickly recognize their relationship and their dependence on trees. Right? Not only do they live in them and eat their food, but that's kind of provides the habitat for them. So they're certainly really important to squirrels, but to many other species of wildlife. Right? And if you think about all of our species of wildlife here in Kentucky, many of them at one point or another are really very dependent on our forests or various stages of our forests. These forests help provide what we call habitat, which is basically broken down into providing a number of different benefits. They provide food, they provide water, cover, and a place to reproduce. And trees and forests are really important when it comes to habitat for wildlife. And we can do practices that can enhance the habitat for certain species. And that's why we always encourage folks that they're interested in working or having wildlife be an important part of why they're owning and managing their woods, that they're working not only with a professional forester, but also with a professional wildlife biologist. And we have those here in Kentucky. Our Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources has biologists that are available to meet with landowners and help them implement practices on their property that will enhance wildlife habitat. So if that's of interest to you, please make sure you connect with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife Resources, an amazing agency that does a lot of good work here in the state. Next, I want to speak briefly about how trees help clean the air. And, this is one that you may not think a lot of, but they actually are really important in this. They can temporarily, at least, catch particulate matter, such as dust and other kind of heavier particles that are floating in our air. And they can get caught on trees, leaves, and in the canopies, and they can kind of pull them out of the air by doing so. Now, they do have the ability to kind of find their way back into the air, so we can't say it temporarily catch, but it does reduce the amount of particulate matter in an area, which is really important. They also are really important when it comes to absorbing, and this is much more of a permanent type of absorption of some of these gaseous molecules that are really kind of detrimental to human health. We think about sulfur dioxide and nitrous oxide, as carbon monoxide, all have very negative impacts on people and their health. So by the trees, the ability to kind of pull those out of the air and store them in their wood and other parts of their tree, that basically removes them from the atmosphere and what we're having to be exposed to. So a big shout out to trees for helping clean our air for sure. Think about oxygen, right? And that's one that we often hear from children when we talk about what do trees provide. And I say oxygen. And it always gets me excited because it's really important. They really do provide oxygen. And through the magic of photosynthesis, they're able to kind of provide us that. And, if you think about how much oxygen trees can produce, I checked in on the Arbor Day Foundation, and they had a nice little factoid there that I wanted to share with you all. And it was 2 mature trees can provide enough oxygen for a family of 4. So, and one tree produces approximately 260 pounds of oxygen a year. So, that is an important benefit for sure that trees do provide to us. So, thanks to trees for providing us some oxygen. Here's one that's really a hot topic, if you will, right now, and has been for a number of years: trees and their ability to sequester carbon. And the reason we think often of trees and their ability to do so is because trees are approximately 50% carbon on a dry weight basis. So that is a lot of carbon that's being stored up in those trees and in the roots. Trees also help with soil carbon as well. So they're really important when it comes to sequestering carbon out of the atmosphere. And that's really what they're very efficient at doing. And that ends up creating the wood that we'll end up using. And we'll hear more about a little bit later. Just last year, NOAA put out a statement that said that the atmospheric carbon had reached its highest level, and that was over 417 parts per million. So that's the most carbon we've ever had in the air, and I think everybody would start to agree, at least, that there is some real issues related to having climate change, and carbon dioxide is a big part of that. So trees are often looked at as being an answer, right? And one of the ways that we think about that is if we plant more trees or protect current trees, that we can do better in sequestering carbon. And a recent study and that was just published like 2 days ago in the journal Nature, which is a pretty prominent natural resource related journal, very well noted, if you will. And they just released an article and it was titled Integrated Global Assessment of the Natural Forest Carbon Potential. And that argued that our forests, if we did right by them, that they could suck up an estimated 226 gigatons of carbon. So, we may argue a little bit about how many trees we can plant and where that we can plant them, but I don't think we can argue that having more trees on the ground is going to be beneficial for many reasons, but certainly carbon sequestration is one of those. Also, we think about trees and forests as recreational opportunities. We think about our Daniel Boone National Forest here in Kentucky, or our Land Between Lakes National Forest, or our state forests that we have here in the state, as well as private forest landowners that make their property available to family members and friends and neighbors and others. So there's really a lot of value when you think about our trees and forests from a recreational providing opportunity. And that could include exercise as well. We see some bikers down here in the lower right. But as these forests and trees attract these people, they're also really important when it comes to tourism. They have the ability to bring in dollars and to help local communities, and whether they stay at hotels or they're buying gas or eating at restaurants or shopping at local shops. Not only do they help us, provide these recreational opportunities, but they also help serve as a catalyst for tourism opportunities. We have a lot of people out there looking at fall colors, right? We're kind of on the downwane of that, but it's still an important draw for people. So let's not forget the recreational opportunities that forests provide and their importance to tourism here in Kentucky as well. Another reason we love trees and the benefits that they and forests provide is they can help us to de-stress. And there's been a number of studies that have been ongoing over the last number of years, and they basically were taking people out into forested environments, and they were measuring their cortisol levels before and after exposure and other kind of stress indicators of their overall well-being. And they were able to significantly show that spending some time in forests and around trees was able to reduce those stress levels or those stress indicators. So I think we all recognize that when you get out in the trees and the forest, some of that daily stress can kind of fade away a little bit, and we can kind of focus on, being in nature and being part of nature. So that's a benefit that we may not always kind of point to, but it certainly is a benefit for sure that trees and forests provide to all of us. They call that term forest bathing. It is basically just bathing in the forest and all the benefits that it provides. So if you are interested in learning more about that, you can check out, there's plenty of studies you'll be able to find that talk about forest bathing. Another important role that our trees play, and especially when it comes to our cities and our urban areas, is they act really in a lot of ways as natural air conditioners. One of the challenges we have in our cities is the urban heat island effect. And it's basically where we have a limited amount of vegetation or other surfaces that are able to kind of absorb that heat. And the buildings end up reflecting it, and the pavement ends up kind of absorbing it. And we end up with the extra heat in these urban areas. And it has really detrimental impacts on people's health. The city of Louisville just received a significant grant to support of further tree planting. And part of that is because it has an urban heat island that's going on there in Louisville. So to try to help those people have better tree canopies really helps the communities overall. And unfortunately, often some of the areas that have the least tree cover are those with the least economics to deal with them. So I think it's on all of us to try to help those communities have a better forest canopy, because we all benefit from it, right? We can reduce instances of healthcare needs by having more trees in our cities. So that's a real benefit that trees provide in our urban areas. Also, trees and forests are important to legacy. When we think about why many people own their forests, and we've asked them this through the National Woodland Owner Survey numerous times for more than, I don't know, 30 years, we've been asking this question. Why do you own your forest? Why are those forests important to you? And without a doubt, almost every time, one of the top three options that comes up is legacy and the ability to pass that property on to the heirs and to connect to future generations as well. So these forests and trees that we own, they are very important to legacy issues. They provide a connection not only to our past, but they also provide us hope for the future. So we see these young men hugging a tree down here, and they're certainly thankful for trees, as we all are. Certainly, if you're watching the show, you're probably a fan of trees as well. But let's not forget that legacy component. Many of our woodland owners are struggling with having heirs that are interested in caring for that property and taking over that property. So all the support we can get in trying to engage family members in forest management, building those connections of those family members to those forests can help address some of those issues. So a big thanks to all of our woodland owners who are really protecting and managing their forests so that they can pass it on to future generations. So again, trees and forests provide many benefits, and we love them all, right? But unfortunately, our trees and forests are facing many threats. We look at invasive plants, we look at wildfires, invasive insects, and diseases. All of these things are really putting newish, if you will, stressors on our forests that maybe they didn't have to face a number of years ago. So that really changes the playing field a little bit for our trees and forests. So that's where we can come in and make a positive impact. By being good stewards of our trees and forests, we can help them to be more productive and healthier than they otherwise would be. So I will encourage you all, if you are an owner of a few trees, maybe you just have a few trees in your yard, or you're thinking about adding trees to your landscape, the U.S. Forest Service put together a nice manual called Trees Owner Manual, the Tree Owner's Manual. And this is a nice publication. It's pretty short, but it covers many of the aspects of tree care and tree planting. And if that's something you're interested in, I encourage you to check it out. I do have the URL there at the bottom, you can see. And if you're a woodland owner if you're a woodland owner, make sure you are working with a professional forester. And we have the Kentucky Division of Forestry as a state agency, and they administer the Forest Stewardship Program here in Kentucky. And this is a program that allows woodland owners to connect with a professional forester. They can come out and meet with you on your property, and they can talk with you about maybe some of the practices that we can do on your property to achieve your objectives. And that's an important thing to remember, that woodland management plans are based on the objectives of the landowners. Your natural resource professionals are going to do their best to help you have healthier, productive forests, but they're going to try to help you move your forest in a direction that meets your objectives. So if you're not familiar with the Forest Stewardship Program, I encourage you to check it out. I have the URL listed there below as well. And that's a great opportunity. And if you don't end up working with the Kentucky Division of Forestry, we also have consulting foresters out there that are represented by our Kentucky Association of Consulting Foresters, as well as technical service providers who are affiliated with the Natural Resources Conservation Service. So there's plenty of foresters out there. And if you have trouble tracking them down, feel free to let me know, and I'll try to help you however I can. But those are just many of the benefits I wanted to share with you about our trees and forests, and just how important they are.
Yeah. Well, thank you for that presentation. That was really good. Because there's a lot of times I think a lot of people know some of the things you said, but it's just something that we need reminding about. And so I really appreciate that. So we're going to move on now to Thanksgiving birds. So Dr. DJ McNeil did a video for us, and some of those you're going to be like, I thought of that, but I wasn't quite sure, about Thanksgiving. So it's a really interesting. And so we're going to go ahead and play that.
Sounds good.
Folks, welcome to another Bird of the Month. This is the November 2023 edition. And this month we're going to talk about birds related to the Thanksgiving holiday, right? Good. So we've all got our minds, at least I certainly do, and I think a lot of From the Woods Today listeners do, have our minds position toward Thanksgiving, which is right around the corner, right? And as we know, birds play a key role in our Thanksgiving dinners. One bird in particular you might be thinking of as playing a major role in Thanksgiving dinner. And we're going to talk about that species, don't you worry. But for today's bird of the month, I'd like to dive into where do some of these domesticated birds that may appear at our dinner table, where do they actually come from? And how do these birds differ from their wild counterparts? Right, we're going to first start with the wild turkey. Of course, everybody's favorite, Meleagris gallopavo. So the wild turkey, I've got a couple of images here. This is a female wild turkey, or two female wild turkeys in the upper right. An adult female wild turkey is called a hen, which we will discuss. And then this is a male down here. So this is a bird that's native to North America. We've all seen them probably around Kentucky. And these are flighted birds. We're going to discuss the domestic turkey soon, so that's an important contrast. The wild turkey is very adept at flying. These birds roost in trees, so they can escape predators quite handily. So we've talked about the hen here and the tom. A tom is a male, or at least a mature male. And the male has a bunch of distinctive plumage characteristics, or some of it's non-plumage, in fact. For instance, we've got this bright, colorful head, much more colorful than we saw in the hen. We've got a fleshy kind of knob here that kind of comes out and it dangles over the side of the bill. That's called the snood. And of course, the male has this almost like tuft of hair. Now, obviously, it's a feather, or it's a modified feather because birds don't have hair. But they have this kind of beard that sticks out. And these are all traits that female turkeys use to judge whether a male is a suitable mate. Males also have these spurs. It's very difficult to see in this image, but a little spur there. They can be an inch or more on the tarsus of the male, the scaly part of the leg. These are used to fight with other males for access to females. And of course, we think of the classic turkey doing a courtship display, which is where the male puffs out all of his feathers, opens up his fan tail, and struts around in a way to attract a female. So this is only done by males, and it's done as a means, mostly in the spring, to attract a mate. Now, of course, Meleagris gallopavo domesticus is our domestic turkey. Now, this bird, as you might expect, was domesticated from the wild turkey in central Mexico about 2,000 years ago. Now, domestic turkeys, unlike wild turkeys, generally cannot fly. Some young birds that are often called chicks, or more appropriately in the case of the turkey, a poult. Poults can fly for a while, but as they get older and domestic birds, they tend to fly less and less, and they're less able to do so. And a big part of this is because domestic turkeys have been bred to be huge. I mean, they're often double the weight of their wild counterparts, some birds being as much as 45 pounds, just massive birds. And that's even larger than our native swans generally are. Sort of semi-wild looking animal being more or less here, but that's what's happened. Easily the most famous and popular of our domesticated birds. We will discuss, however, it's not the first domesticated bird. The domesticated chicken has been turned into a wide variety of breeds. Just as a couple examples, this one here, where you can't even see its head and it's got sort of an afro, is called the silky, and there's different colors of silky. That's a white silky chicken. They're very bizarre, have black skin and black bones and have an extra toe. This is a Polish chicken here with this really big afro. This is a barred rock here. We've got looks like a frizzled cochin. You've got a wide variety of different breeds that are selected for different things, right? Some breeds of chicken are selected for their eggs. Others are selected for their meat, like the Cornish rock, which we usually get in the grocery store. Others still are bred for show or hobby, right? I mean, this Polish chicken here, I mean, it's going to lay eggs and things like that, but it's not particularly practical, and neither is the silky chicken, right? It's almost like the toy poodle of the chicken world, if you will. And it's just crazy, again, to think that this bird here came from the red jungle fowl, and it did. Okay, mallard, Anis platyrhynchos. So you may be wondering, well, what the heck, right? We don't I don't eat mallards for Thanksgiving or at all, right? Unless you're a hunter, the idea of eating a mallard seems kind of weird. Well, as we will discuss, mallards are a domesticated bird. At least they have been domesticated. Now, these are wild mallards shown here, and this is one of the most widespread, if not the most widespread, duck species in the entire world. They're found across the entire northern hemisphere, and males and females. We've got a male here with this green head and chestnut breast and this white ring around the neck. And the female, shown here, totally different, right? They're very visually distinctive. We've got the female, which produces those very loud quacks, which is kind of contrary to what most birds do. In many cases, the male is the noisy one. Well, in ducks, the opposite is true. So when you go to the park and you hear ducks, mallards especially, quacking, and you hear that loud quack, 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 that's the female mallard producing that. The male isn't mute, but his quacks are very kind of quiet and sort of flat. Now, mallards are very cold-hardy birds, but they are very migratory as well, but they'll stay in areas as long as there's some open water and food available for them. And they're what we consider a dabbling duck. So they feed in the water by tipping their head and breast underwater and leaving their butt sticking up in the air while they forage on things under the water. But here we are, Anas platyrincos domesticus. And the reason why we're talking about the mallard is it is the father or mother of all domesticated ducks, with one exception that we'll talk about in a moment. So any domesticated duck virtually is a mallard. So these include these little tiny domesticated ducks called call ducks, and these large bodied things like Pekin ducks. And you commonly find these domesticated mallards released in local city parks. People get them for Easter, and when they get sick of them, they dump them off at the park. And they can kind of survive short term on their own, although it's generally not good to do that because they'll hybridize with wild ducks and things like that. But the point is, these domesticated ducks, which are commonly eaten by people, are all mallards, domesticated mallards. That is with one major exception, Muscovy ducks. So I have that in here as an honorable mention. So this is a wild type Muscovy duck, really wild looking. It's got these black and red warts all over its face, and some birds have almost like a mohawk. And this one down here is a domesticated one, which this happens to be all white except for the warty face. Some of them are mottled with white and black and green and all these kind of things. This is a bird originally from Latin America. They've been domesticated somewhat more recently, with the males being much larger than the females. It's very unusual. I mean, in waterfowl, it's typical for the male to be larger, and most birds for that matter. But in the case of the Muscovy duck, the male is huge, like double the size of the female. And as a consequence, males are frequently flightless, whereas females can fly with no problem. The males also tend to have more of that warty skin on the face, with the females having a lot less of that. And you can find pretty large feral populations of Muscovy duck in parts of Florida, for instance. Okay, the last bird we're going to talk about is the rock dove, Columba livia. So this is a dove. You can find it in Lexington and in all parts of eastern, well, pretty much the entire United States, but Kentucky for sure, mostly in either urban areas or agricultural areas. Thinking of Lexington, of course, being here in Lexington, UK, we have pigeons all over the place, including here on campus. And it's a large-bodied dove, so we like to think of pigeons, the rock dove, as a kind of a rat with wings, as we often say. But it's a wild dove, right? So often called the rock pigeon, and the word pigeon and dove are generally synonyms. Dove being a smaller kind of dove, and a pigeon being a larger kind of dove. But they're really interesting birds. So the rock dove is monogamous. So if you have a male and a female, they stay as a pair until one of them dies, and then the remaining bird will take a new mate. But while they're together, they're pretty much monogamous. And they produce a nest with 2 squabs, which is the name for a baby pigeon, per nest, and they'll do multiple nests per year. So the male and female will fertilize a pair of eggs. They'll take turns incubating those eggs, and then when you've got 2 little squabs in the nest, the mom and dad will take care of them until the little squabs fledge. And then dad will assume care of those squabs, kind of raising them into mature juveniles, while mom starts the next clutch, and they'll produce several clutches per summer. In their native range of Europe, Africa, and Asia, they nest on cliff sides and are found in many very kind of dry places, but they're pretty adaptable. This is that wild form of the rock dove. So it's kind of this gray overall bird, and it's got this light gray, kind of blue-gray wing with two dark bars along the secondaries and coverts. And here's a bird in flight, which shows this dark band on the tail, very distinctive, and white rump, very distinctive pattern on the rock dove. Well, the rock dove, like so many of these other birds, and produced a wide variety of sort of phenotypes or visual appearances. And the rock dove, Columba livia domesticus, is the oldest domesticated bird species on Earth. They've been domesticated for more than 10,000 years. Excuse me, very interesting bird, strong homing instincts, which is one of the things that makes them valuable for carrying messages. And the way that works is let's say you're going off to war and you want to send messages back home. Well, you bring a bunch of pigeons from home with you to war. You have a big loft of pigeons that are all basically programmed to go home. That's all they want to do. You let them out of the cage, they fly home. Well, if you want to send a message back home, you tie a little note onto that pigeon's leg and release it, and it'll fly back. Now, getting a message from home to you is a little bit more tricky, but you can send messages back home because the pigeons have that homing instinct. As a result, many people also engage in pigeon racing, which is a pretty interesting sort of sport. And they're also edible, which is probably what caused people to start domesticating them in the first place. And they have a reputation for being dirty. And maybe in some downtown places they can be, but in say, an agricultural setting, I've personally eaten pigeon meat, and it's quite good. I mean, if you've ever eaten mourning dove, a pigeon is very similar, but just significantly larger. And of course, you see feral pigeons nesting on buildings as cliffs for nest sites, right? So here's an example of a bunch of feral pigeons up on a telephone wire, right? You've seen these before. This is Columba livia domesticus that have been released and gone feral. And of course, you see white birds like this. And remember, the feral pigeon or a rock dove is a type of dove. So it's very common for white pigeons to be released at weddings as wedding doves. And if you're the person who's selling the newlywed couple the pigeons or the doves, if you're going to phrase them as that, you're being pretty clever, because you're going to sell them the doves, they're going to release the doves for the wedding, and those doves are going to fly back to your house, back to the loft where they came from, and you can continue to sell them to the next person. Do it over and over and over again, because 9 times out of 10, wedding doves are actually white homing pigeons. Well, there's a little bit of information. Well, there's a little bit of information about some of our domesticated birds that may feature at our Thanksgiving dinner. With that, we'll leave you off and look forward to next month's Bird of the Month, where we'll be discussing the 12 days of Christmas. In the meantime, happy Thanksgiving, whatever bird you're eating this year.
Well, that was really neat. I hadn't seen all of those birds, and some of them, if I would have seen them, I was like, what's that? So I greatly appreciate Dr. McNeil going through all of those.
Yeah, I'm not sure that I'm going to switch from turkey, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think I'll stick with turkey. Yeah.
But I do appreciate Dr. McNeil for putting those segments together. They're really enjoyable, and it gives us some insight into a part of the world that we don't maybe think about as much. So
Exactly.
really, it's very cool.
Exactly. All right. So next we have Forest Products. So Chad Nyman is on. Hi, Chad. Greatly appreciate you being with us today.
Hello, Renee and Billy. Glad to be here with you all today.
Good to have you, buddy.
So I really wanted to try to talk about forest products as well as bridging with the woodland owners and everyone else that's involved in this whole forest product supply chain. As Billy said, we've got so much to be thankful for out there in our forests, and the forest products that we derive from those woods. They really do make our lives better, reduce our impact on this planet and make life much better. So just a few of the high notes, if you will, and we've talked about some of these already this morning. The clean air, the clean water that these forest ecosystems provide for us, those woods out there, they help take up storm water when you get torrential downpour and groundwater infiltration, things that really make our communities safer by having areas for this water to go and to be absorbed and taken up. And the wildlife habitat, it's amazing, from early successional habitat for things like grouse and turkey and migratory songbirds that Dr. DJ McNeil was talking about in episode 167, and how logging can benefit some of these birds that are coming all the way from South America all the way up to our mature woodlands, and how those different systems provide different benefits for different wildlife, and why it is important that we have a variety, a patchwork quilt, if you will, of different wildlife habitat out there on the landscape. But then there's these wood and paper products, even including strong building materials that we use in our homes and buildings that really do help reduce environmental impact for all of our life's activities. And carbon storage and sequestration, which is becoming more and more understood in our society with all the information we've got available. And nutrient cycling, we really take for granted all the nutrient cycling that occurs from our forests and the wildlife that are out there living and cohabitating within those systems, and how nutrients move through those systems. But then, as Billy talked a bit earlier, we get to recreate and get out and enjoy those woods, and so many different things that we can do out there to get exercise and be connected to the world that we live in. And we got to be grateful that we have this knowledge of forest health and the discipline that forest health provides to our society, and merging together so many different sciences, and how we can use that to better understand forest succession, while being able to provide markets that allow for improving forest health through planned disturbance and forest succession, while also utilizing mature trees that are approaching the end of their life and they're facing decomposition. And so the best thing we can do is utilize those trees in a way that they will reduce impact, store that carbon, and help us out throughout our lives with the products that we can use that material for. And so what does it mean to be renewable? There's a few different meanings, but when you look at our forest systems, these hardwood forests that we have here in Kentucky, I believe it's important that the resource is not depleted. It's I think, an important component of being renewable. One neat thing that we have in our systems is that we have a lot of natural regeneration. These seed sources from the trees allow for that regeneration process to occur naturally on its own. But what's important and what's required for this to occur is for that growing space to not be developed and the woods be protected from invading insects, plants, and disease. A lot of those tenets of forest health that we learn about. And so when we think about the big picture, I think it's really important that we are also thankful for the contribution that these forests and the industries that make products from this wood provide to us. We've got a map here that we've got put together that shows each dot is an industry that uses wood across Kentucky. And the different color scheme you can see here shows the number of master loggers that are in each of these counties. And so we have a lot of industry that provides $13.5 billion annually to our total economic contribution for the state, which is our largest agricultural sector in Kentucky. And each of those dots, there's 674 industries statewide, located in 114 of our 120 counties. And we have over 2,200 Kentucky master loggers across the state. And so we put this information together as a team in our economic contribution report. And here is a picture of that. And this can be found on our Forestry Extension website, UKY Forest Economic Contribution Report in a search engine. We'll bring that up if you would like to look through that report. I think it's also important that we're thankful for the people that work within this forest sector and within the industry. So many industries there across the state. And overall, we have over 49,000 people and jobs that are supported by the forest sector in Kentucky. And so that includes from the woods all the way up to finished product, as well as supporting industries. And so one effort we have here in Kentucky ongoing in partnership with the Kentucky Division of Forestry, UK Forestry Extension, and the Kentucky Forest Industries Association is the Kentucky Forestry Works program, where we're working with a high school curriculum and resources to help teach the next generation about forestry careers that exists out there, all the way from the woods into finished product. We also need to be thankful for these woodland owners and farmers across the state that they own such a large percentage of our forests. As we know, the overwhelming majority are privately owned. And so these are the folks that actually grow the trees and manage our woods. And we hope that these folks will work with foresters and natural resource professionals to help give them the best information to make the best decisions for their land into the future. As we know, these forests, they grow slowly. And so in a 70-year time frame, there may be one harvest that occurs. And so the timing of that and doing it right is so critical to get it done well. We know there's this huge regional economic stimulus from this wood economy. And we know that there's so many jobs that are created and income that's generated from these private woodland owners and farmers. And there's, around 430,000 people that are in that private land ownership that actually own the forests of Kentucky. So many people out there that contribute to the management of the forests that cover nearly half of our state. And so none of that management would be possible without loggers. These folks, the practitioners, the folks that actually implement the practices out there, harvest the trees, extract them for forest products, and help that landowner to manage that land to the objectives that they have. And so we know that good logging creates early successional habitat and forage for wildlife. It creates a light environment and the space for advanced regeneration to be able to grow for that next generation of trees to be able to fill that space. And we know that material for wood products. So a very important component between the woodland owners and the loggers. And along the lines of logging, I know Lee will probably talk much more in detail about this, but I do want to point out that we have some great laws and resources for the best management practices for logging. There's a copy of the field guide here that loggers use to make sure that they're practicing all of the best management practices. And with Kentucky, we have KRS 149.344, which requires logging businesses to follow these appropriate BMPs for water protection and to have a master logger on site while that job is active. It is important that landowners know that if they have a property over 10 acres, that they need to have a ag water quality plan, and that the private landowner is ultimately responsible for any water quality violations that occur on their property. And so just to acknowledge that we have this great Kentucky Forest Conservation Act and good laws in place that help to regulate logging in a good way. But then we're also thankful for foresters. And so these professional foresters, they help those landowners plan and make important woodland management decisions, help them understand what's out there on their property so that they can make the best future decisions for their land. And those foresters, they work directly with loggers to be able to successfully implement the harvest to the plan and to overcome any obstacles as they're out there in making that work. We're also very thankful for forestry education and science. So in our forestry extension team here, we've got a strong blending of applied knowledge in forestry, as well as ecology, wildlife biology, wood product science. And so teaching the next generation and reaching landowners and woodland owners and loggers, forest industry, and the general public about the benefits of forestry for wildlife, for carbon storage, for wood products, and all of the other disciplines in between. And so we are fortunate to have such an abundance of information available to us nowadays. I do really want to quickly acknowledge we're in fire season in Kentucky. We have a lot of fires when you get out into the wooded areas, especially in dry years. And so we're very thankful for rangers and woodland firefighters that help to manage our resources out there. And they're trained and prescribed in wildfire techniques. This image in the background here is from out west, and it shows, catastrophic wildfire that completely changed the stand dynamics here. In a picture down here, we can see a Kentucky Division of Forestry employee responding to a fire in Kentucky. And so these firefighters, they protect our woods and property. They use prescribed fire as a useful management tool to reduce wildfire risk and catastrophic wildfire. And Kentucky Division of Forestry leads that effort here, and they recruit assistance when needed. But with wood products, we know that we can reduce environmental impact. Innovative wooden components and products that reduce our environmental impact of our built environment. We know that wood is stored and sequestered carbon. And Billy talked about the reduction of that urban heat sink with trees, but wood products also have this benefit due to the fact that wood is a great insulator, which reduces heating and cooling costs of the structures. There's also this lower carbon emission through the entire life cycle with wood products compared to non-renewable products. And there is this other benefit of natural characteristics and beauty, which we refer to as biophilic properties. And so we know that wood products, they fill our homes, our schools, our offices, and so many ways that they're benefiting our society. Here, this is an older picture. It's the Smile. It was a demonstration piece put in by Allison Brooks Architects, and it uses yellow poplar in a cross-laminated timber panel. And so these panels are assembled to demonstrate the strength and beauty of the yellow poplar tree and its wood and how it can be used for structural purposes. But we also know with packaging and paper products that almost everything we buy comes in some form of packaging, which protects the good from any damage and provides sanitation. We know that there are some labels that help to inform consumers of the material that packaging is made out of. And so there's a few of these logos here that show what some of those look like. But it's important to note that in Kentucky, paper is made from chipping low-grade trees through forest management, as well as residues from lumber production. And music would not be the same without forest products. And so I want to quickly just show this. Billy talked about recreation, and there's an abundance of recreation, but when we look at sports, the bowling alley wouldn't be the same without the wood, and basketball courts, would be different without having maple floor, and all of these other things. We have Louisville Slugger, with a big 100-foot bat out there on Main Street in Louisville. But so many benefits that we get from our forests and the recreation they provide. And it's also important to note that it's vital for our transportation and supply chain. So there's literally nothing that doesn't ride on a railway line that has cross ties supporting the rail, or semi-trailer made out of wood that handles all of those goods. Pallets, personal vehicles used to be made out of a lot of wood. That's where the term floorboard comes from. So just some different reasons to be thankful for forests and forest products, and celebrate forest products and forests every day.
Thanks, Chad. We greatly appreciate that. We've kind of come full circle on this. And so we greatly appreciate you touching on some of the forest products that we have in our forests, and then things, and we have a forest Products Week that we celebrate too. So, some people can look at that and maybe next year start, getting on the Forest Product Week chain.
Yeah, and highlighting all those amazing individuals that are engaged in our forests in various ways. That's great, Chad.
Awesome.
Thank you so much for that. Appreciate that.
Thank you all.
All right. So we went from trees and animals and forest products. Now we're going to water. So Lee is here to talk about water, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, water's pretty important, Lee.
A little bit.
I think so. Some would say it's one of the critical elements to life.
Kind of.
So give me just a second. Let me get this pulled up.
You're good.
No problem.
All right. So my talk today is titled Expressing Gratitude for the Water Quality and Quantity Benefits of Forests. So this talk's the collection of 7 expressions of gratitude for the water quality and quantity benefits of forests in a little different format than you may be used to. This talk was partially inspired by a recent program introduction that I heard Doug McLaren give at an event in Bullitt County, Kentucky, where he mentioned AI, or artificial intelligence, and tied it back to a talk on forestry. I wasn't really expecting his introduction, so it kind of caught me off guard, and it really impacted me in kind of an unexpected way. I realized that what really resonated with me about the talk was that he weaved storytelling into his talk in a way that made the topic compelling. And I need to move something real quick. There we go. Zoom's popping up things everywhere. And ultimately relevant when he got to the connection to the topic at hand. So a challenge I often run into is failing to take photos of things in the field that I would like to use in presentations or papers. So a light bulb kind of went off recently, and I thought maybe I can explore the use of AI generated images to help with storytelling and science communication and presentations when I just don't have the images to match the story I want to tell when I'm trying to provide extension talks. So today I'm experimenting a bit with both the use of AI generated images and storytelling. So thus, the second part of my title, if I can get show, an experiment in science communication through visual storytelling with OpenAI's ChatGPT-4 DALL-E 3. So maybe not what you expected, but that's where we're going for the next 10 minutes. This storytelling exercise will take you on a trip to an imaginary community, not too unlike ones you visited. The community faces the typical challenges of a city balancing urban growth, suburban sprawl, the preservation of farmland and forests, and the protection of the environment while maintaining a healthy economy that supports a healthy community. The community has found ways to incorporate healthy managed forests into their plans for development in their watersheds surrounding the community, and the benefits are plentiful. So I hope you all enjoy my first adventure in AI generated images and incorporating them into my presentation. And I hope that the story I tell in the next roughly 8 to 10 minutes will help communicate the gratitude that I have for forests and their water quality and quantity benefits. So let's go visit the community now. So our visit starts in a clearing by the river that flows past the city. The city and surrounding landowners have made a strong commitment to maintaining forested riparian buffers adjacent to the rivers and other waterways and the watersheds surrounding their community. These buffers were intentionally incentivized through multiple cost share programs throughout the area because the community knew that forested land adjacent to their waterways can help to offset some of the impacts of land use change. The community had specific concerns about managing erosion and nutrient runoff across the watershed. So the community noticed that by utilizing forested riparian buffers throughout their landscape, they're able to help manage sedimentation and nutrient delivery to their waterways by conducting downstream monitoring. And this is not only a benefit to their local water quality, but to our downstream neighbors below the community. The community partnered with their local resource agencies and university extension professionals to specifically encourage landowners to maintain diverse forest vegetation along their stream banks. Studies have shown that stream bank erosion itself accounts for a large portion of the suspended sediment load in streams, in some cases as much as 90%. The community learned that mowed turf grass and pasture right up to the streams was not the most effective way to prevent stream bank erosion. The deep roots of native trees, shrubs, and herbaceous forest plants play a critical role in bank stability. Another important management consideration for the community was ensuring that the local waterways had access to their floodplain whenever feasible, considering the adjacent land use. Allowing streams and rivers access to their floodplains aids in dissipating the energy of floodwater during high flow events. It also allows for sediment to settle out on the floodplain and add to the rich soils that are often present in floodplain forests. Local resource agency professionals and university researchers alike were impressed with the extent to which riparian forested buffers were adopted across the surrounding watershed. Several researchers from the local university were monitoring the characteristics of the soil in the forested riparian areas around the community. They noticed that over time, the soils were accumulating and maintaining their organic matter through the decomposition of leaf litter, woody debris, and roots, as well as input from flooding events and other natural sources. This is important because organic matter in soil provides several benefits to water quality and quantity. It can help the soils to maintain and potentially improve their water holding capacity while aiding in nutrient cycling. The researchers also noticed that the soils and the forested riparian buffers had lower levels of compaction than other types of land uses, which encouraged water to infiltrate into the soils and buffer local waterways from a portion of the influx of water that occurs during large rainfall events. Local aquatic biologists and outdoors enthusiasts alike took notice of the clarity and quality of the water that flowed through the local streams. They observed that the forest itself provided many direct benefits to the aquatic life that lived in the streams. The shade that the forest canopy helped to regulate the temperatures of the water that flowed through the streams. This in turn helped to maintain sufficient levels of dissolved oxygen in the water, which is critical to the survival of the many fish and macroinvertebrates that inhabited the waters. They also noticed that the leaf litter and coarse woody debris that entered the stream from the trees provided the basis for the food web in the local aquatic systems. It was also observed that the roots of the trees that protruded from the banks and into the water, along with the woody debris in the streams, provided excellent habitat value for aquatic life. It was also notable that sedimentation in the bottom of the waterways was kept close to natural levels, which protects habitat for the fish and macroinvertebrates that use the bed of the streams to complete their life cycle. Another important consideration for the city and the surrounding communities was where they would be obtaining their drinking water. The community was blessed with a large natural lake with plentiful clean water. The watershed surrounding the lake was maintained in forested land use. Landowners in the lake's watershed utilized woodland management plans in conjunction with a master logger when conducting harvests to protect water quality in the lake. The use of site-specific best management practices and a streamside management zone on all timber harvest operations were critical protections put in place on their forested lands. A specific challenge that the community members wanted to be sure to address within their watershed was the potential impact of flooding during the increasing frequency and intensity of rainfall events. The community was committed to maintaining and managing the headwaters of the watershed and forested land cover because they knew, based on interactions with their local university researchers and resource professionals, that forests provide some buffering of flooding impacts during these high-intensity rainfall events. The trees themselves help to intercept rainfall, slowing it down, while the forest soils act like a sponge to help soak water into the ground and release it to the local waterways at a slower rate, while also recharging groundwater. It was also critical that the streams in the forest were allowed access to their floodplains to help dissipate energy in the floodplain as water worked its way down towards the community from the upstream reaches of the watershed. All of the work that the community had done to ensure that healthy managed forests were a part of their local watersheds was paying off. They quickly became a popular destination for ecotourism for water and forest enthusiasts from across the nation. The timber and non-timber benefits of the forest were helping to support an economy based on recreation, tourism, that was balanced with agriculture, forestry, industrial, commercial, and residential land uses. The community was and is grateful for the water quality and quantity benefits of forests. So I just want to leave you with a statement from the Kentucky Forest Action Plan from 2020 that kind of drives home why this story should hopefully resonate with you, even though it's from a fictional place with fictional photos generated by AI. Threats to forest resources are numerous, including human as well as natural factors. In order to maintain or increase the beneficial effects of forest resources upon the waters of Kentucky, the retention and expansion of forested areas in riparian zones, wetlands around our lakes and pond borders, and above extensive karst features are key. Although threats to these resources remain, opportunities for conservation and restoration of these areas are increasing with increased public awareness of the beneficial influences of forests on water resources. So I just want to say I'm grateful for the opportunity to share with you today and experiment a little bit with a different science communication technique.
Very interesting approach. And yeah, thank you, Lee. Very cool.
Yeah, and all the pictures, oh my goodness, they just pop off the screen. That was amazing.
Yeah, it was an interesting procedure working with ChatGPT to generate those images, and the 7 of them took me about an hour to generate. So not being an artist, that's pretty impressive to think that you can generate high quality images based off of a description you provide to basically a software program and generate things that may be useful for your work.
Yeah, I think we'll be seeing lots more of this as, time progresses for sure, how we can use it to be better educators.
Definitely. Well, thank you, Lee. We appreciate your presentation.
Very much so. Yeah, good stuff. Renee, we covered a lot of great ground today.
We did. We went from, trees to water to forest products to the animals that live in it. I think we pretty much covered it all.
Yeah. What did we say before? Trees are the answer, right? So
no matter what the question is.
No, I seriously appreciate each of our guests today on being on here. Dr. McNeil and Lee and Chad did such a good job. Really appreciate them. And yeah, it was good. Appreciate y'all joining us today. We think there's a lot of people out there that would appreciate and enjoy this show. If you know of some of those folks, please let them know about it. And we're here every Wednesday at 11, and we're trying to develop content related to Kentucky's forests and natural resources to help people be better stewards of them. So share the news about the show.
Definitely. And you can go to fromthewoodstoday.com and get all of our past shows or give us suggestions for shows that you might like to see in the future.
Yeah, we do that often, right? We'll feature things that we get from that. So yeah, if there's something you want to see or you think would be useful or helpful to Kentuckians, let us know and we'll try to make it happen. Definitely.
Let us know. But we will not have a show next week. Just want to remind folks because we are it's for Thanksgiving. So we're taking that Wednesday off, but we will see you the week after that. And we will see you on Wednesday at 11 o'clock. Take care. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
From the woods today.